Manually. Okay, so welcome to the webinar. My name is Tyler Watson, and I'll be looking down and back and forth. Here's my computer, here's my camera. I'm gonna be teaching a lot right here, but also this is gonna be more interactive. I might also have to just add some people here. For those of you who are live, welcome. For those of you who are in the recording, welcome. Today, we are talking about the power of story. Story has been such a huge part in my life. It has helped me go from a place of lack, of struggle, of addiction, of not making money, to learning the power of a story to heal, to transform, inspire others, and help them take action in their life. So by the time we're done today, we're going to cover a lot of things. Number one, today we are going to cover, first off, like what story is. Not just how to share a story, but the story inside of ourselves as well. So a lot of us have multiple stories, and today we're going to unveil all the different stories, whether they're logical stories that you can share to inspire others, or whether they're the negative stories that are seemingly happening consistently in our life that we want to change. And I'm going to teach you three main things today. Let me admit all these people. One is about how story heals. So how to use story to heal yourself. Many people have been through things. Like if you're alive today, you've been through something, right? And today we're going to show you how you can take your core story, the things you've been through, and by acknowledging that story and using it in a powerful way, it will change who you are. It'll heal you while in turn helping others. Cool? So how many in here, first off, would like to have more health, more healing, more happiness? By a show of hand, if you're here live on the video, yes, sweet. And if you're in the chat, just drop a chat, be like, yes, me, or a thumbs up, or however they work there. Very cool. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so we're going to talk about the healing power of story. Now, if you've been through stuff, this can be very daunting. But today I'm going to teach you how, no matter what you've been through, no matter how terrible or how light it might seem, that you have a message and a story that if you utilize it, it can change who you are. And I'm going to share a little bit more about my story in this. The second piece that we're going to talk to, teach on today is on this. We're going to use story also to influence other people. So you can use story to influence others and in a way that can help them change their life. So I use story all the time with my kids, with my wife, with growing my business, with so many ways in order to influence other people to make changes and actually keep commitments in their life. This will help you improve your relationships. This will help you improve your ability to connect to your higher power. This will help you in so many different ways. So how many here, whether you're live or in the recording, would like to increase or improve your relationships or your influence on others for positive ways? Yeah? By show of hands, sweet. Or drop in the chat box. Let me know that that is you. Yes, 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 sweet. Okay, that's the second piece. The third piece today. This is by far one of my favorite pieces. They're all really great, but this one is the third part that I'm going to teach you about story is how to use your story to enroll other people, enroll them into your products or your services. So do you have, now I don't know if you like it, but how many would like to make more money? Yeah? Money good? Some of you are like, money, nah, I don't really want that. So yeah, most of us want to create more money, right? So I'm going to teach you how to use your story in order to enroll other people in their life so that they can move forward and transform others as well. So we're going to start with healing. We're going to start then to go into influence. We're going to talk about enrolling. We're going to practice and role play throughout this webinar. So this is going to be an interactive thing. I'm going to see you, you're going to see me, we're going to practice. I'm going to hear your stories. I'm going to coach you if that's okay. And I like to see your faces. It's super fun if I can. It helps me feel like I'm talking to real people. So if you want to have your camera there, that would be fun and exciting. If not, totally fine as well. Either way, a little bit about me, and then we're going to dive in. Also, we're going to go into the steps of a story. So the flow, the 5 steps to share a powerful story, and how not only your story can change or heal others or influence you or enroll, but the power of sharing a crappy story versus a really powerful story and the difference between the two. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. And my goal is to totally just crush this out, help you guys get it. Because if you can get the power of your story, whether it's positive things you're telling yourself or negative things, those are your stories. And I'm going to help you see that the story you have inside of you, it might be ingrained in all parts of your body. And a lot of times our story is so strong that we're broke, we're sick, we've tried something, we failed, that story, because you believe it so much, and it's not just a mental thing, but it's an emotional and physical body thing, that your story will dictate the results you get in your life. If you change your story, you can change your results. And today we're going to dive in and really break down the power of story. Cool? So how many are excited today to learn about the power of story in order to help yourself improve your relationships, heal yourself, influence others, and enroll other people in their life? Yeah? Thumbs up, hands up. Yes, sweet. Story, cool. Very cool. I'm going to share a little bit about myself. Then we're going to, by the way, where are you guys from? Go ahead. Those of you who are recently joining, go ahead. Where are you from? I'd love to hear where you're plugging into. And also, yeah, so just jot down in the chat there where you're from. And I'm going to share a little bit about my backstory about why this matters and how it can help you. So for me, so California, New York City, very cool. We got all sorts of Silver Spring, MD, Michigan, Salt Lake City. Very cool. So all sorts of places. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay. Very cool. For me, when back almost 6.5 years ago, I was a massage therapist, and I was addicted to pornography. I was addicted to struggle. I had a very difficult time valuing myself. It was very hard to communicate. And I had so many stories that defined me. My story was so great that, and here's, most people are so sold on their story that they sell it to themselves every single day. And not only are they selling it to themselves, they're selling it to others. And I'm not talking about the positive stories, but the negative stories that we have in our lives. And for me, I had a lot of negative stories. And I'm going to break down, first off, like after I share a little bit about myself, the power of story, but also the formula of story, and how every story has a unique pattern that you can break and how to change it. Okay. So for me, back 6.5 years ago, I had so many stories that seemed real because of evidence, right? I had all this evidence built up. I struggled with finances. I was terrified to get into a relationship. I watched my mom go through 4 divorces, my dad through 2. And I was so scared to get into a relationship and just ruin it. It just felt like I had no hope. And so as I struggled, I didn't think at the time that I really had a story at all. I was just like, excuse me. I was just thought that life was normal. Like that was how you work, and you just got to work really hard. And so I didn't really know that I had much value or a story behind my life. And as I learned about the power of story, and that the story defined me, and that my story is exactly how I had my life set up, was due to all the stories in my head and all in my body. That I realized that everything I had created in my life was due to a story that I had created and believed, and it was so strong, I sold myself on it every single day. And I was good at selling myself this story that I was struggling, I was addicted, I couldn't change, I was going to ruin the relationships. As I learned about the power of story and how to change my life and change my perceptions and change how I felt about myself, I went from a place literally that first year struggling, making less than $12,500, super struggling, like literally would sometimes drive, knock on doors, desperate to make sales, crying in my car because I felt like nobody cared. God had abandoned me. I had so much negativity and so much doubt inside of me that I felt like all hope was just gone. To a place where the next year, shifting a lot of my story, being able to embrace, heal myself, and learn how to influence others and embrace the power of enrolling people. That I went from a place of making less than $13,000 in a year to making over $135,000 the next year, to then almost tripling it the next year, and continuing growing and growing and growing in order to not just grow my income, but more importantly to me is I was able to master myself in a way that I know my marriage is great. We constantly work on it. That I have 3 beautiful girls, and I'm not perfect by any means, but I know that if something drops, it's because of my story. And I can change that, and I can change it quickly. It doesn't have to take 30, 40 years. It can be minutes or hours or days. Cool? So today, I'm going to help you, hopefully. My goal is to help you understand the power of your story. That no matter what you have experienced in life, it is because your story of that thing is stronger than the story of what you want. Let me repeat this. What you have right now, XYZ problem in your life, the only reason that problem exists is because the story around it is stronger than the story around what you want. So the story of the pain and the struggle is stronger, is more vivid and believable in every part of your body than the story of what you want. We literally become addicted to these pain stories. So is it okay if I help you make some changes today? Like, how many are excited to utilize this? If you can really embrace the power of story, I'm hoping today can be one of the most transformational experiences, at least today, hopefully of the month and maybe even this year, as you learn the power of this and really apply it. Some of you might just listen to this, not going to interact, and that's fine. But those of you who know that you are a creator of your reality, or at least hope that you're a creator of your reality and that you can change it, today I want to empower you with knowledge and skills so that you can go through anything, truly become unstoppable in your life, learning how to share a story that heals, that influences, and enrolls others. Sound good? Okay, I know I'm doing this a lot, but I want you to really embrace this because this is something you've got to enroll yourself by believing that this can change. It starts with belief. Balin says, heck yeah, I'm a creator of my reality. Love it. Love it. By the way, I love seeing everybody's faces. Welcome. It's good to see. I know many of you, some of you are brand new. By the way, how many is brand new? How many have no idea really who I am? You just saw me maybe on an ad or something and you're kind of new to the place. How many are kind of new to this world of what I do or what I teach? Anybody here a little bit newer? If so, drop in the chat. I just kind of want to see where you're at. And then how many of you have been here around a little bit? You know a little bit about me. You've done some of the techniques I teach. You can just be like, hey, I'm a veteran, or I'm kind of in between. So whatever you want to say. Cool. All right. Sweet. So we've got some new people. Welcome. Welcome those who are new. Welcome to the world of transformational alignment. And those of you who have been around a while, welcome. This will be fun. All right. So let's talk about the power of a story that heals. Okay. what does healing mean? Well, actually, in order to do that, let's first break down what story is. So when you think of story, what is the definition that comes to your mind? This is where you're going to unmute yourself. I would like to hear some voices. When you think of the word story, what definition do you think of when you think story? What does story mean? Let's hear it. You can unmute yourself or drop it in the chat. I prefer hearing some voices. I don't even know if anybody's mics work.
A journey.
A journey. Very cool. What else?
The experience you tell yourself.
The experience you tell yourself. Okay, very good. So journey, the experience you tell yourself. Story. What does story mean?
Words.
Words. Good. Something that is stored and it gets bigger and bigger. Ooh, that's a good definition. Cool. So we've got a couple definitions. Words, a journey, something gets stored and gets bigger and bigger. Yeah, so stories can be defined in many different ways. When I think of story, I think of a system of beliefs that are ingrained that create your reality. A system of beliefs that are ingrained that create your reality. Also, story is a pattern of communication. So it's a system of how we communicate. It can be both positive or negative. Okay, so stories are it's a way to express or experience something, and it can be positive or negative. Now, I did take some notes on this that I'm going to go through. So here's a couple pieces about stories. Stories are fed by evidence. Evidence. So when we see or experience or hear or think or feel something, it now becomes part of our story. Okay? So evidence adds to or holds on and creates part of our story. Evidence is locked in place. So this evidence gets locked in place. If it's for a negative story, it gets locked in place by pain. So you have this pain that will lock the evidence in place. So if you go through something traumatic in life, it will have a stimulus of pain, which now provides evidence to add to your story. Okay, that's important. If you have a positive story in your life, what locks in positive things in a story is pleasure. So if we go through life and we experience certain forms of pleasure, joy, and the excitement of things, it will create evidence which will lock in for our story. So most people, they live their life based off of this, unfortunately. They go through a lot of pain, and it now becomes their reality to create their future. If we want to change this, what is pain? Let's figure this out. So when we think about pain, pain is a disconnection. So if you think about pain, pain is a disconnection. And I might spell things 100 different ways. It's called creative. So just be aware of my creative abilities to spell. So we have this evidence that locks in through pain to create our story or our reality through disconnections. How do we change disconnections? That's the goal. So transformational tools, how do we actually go through to heal ourselves, to heal others, is we need to what? What's the opposite of disconnect?
Reconnect?
Yeah, connection, right? Reconnect. So in life, if I am trying to change something, I know that the name of the game is to connect. I need connection. So today I'm going to cover a lot of things today. I've got to teach you what's called a circle of connection. Then I'm going to go over the 5 steps of story. Then we're going to practice story. We're going to practice it to heal. We're going to practice it to influence, and then we're going to practice it to enroll people. So first I got to do all the groundwork so that you can kind of understand the concepts, if that's okay. And then we can practice it and actually like live it. Cool? So here's what's called the circle of connection. Okay. So pain, right? If you think of your story, the pain that you have in life, whether you're broke, whether you're struggling financially, mentally, emotionally, whether you're not having the ideal relationship you want, you feel disconnected from a higher source or whatever it might be, it's due to pain, evidence that has been locked in by pain. So the name of the game, if we can learn to connect that pain, because all pain is a disconnection. Most pain that we generate is from the avoidance of pain. So we go through a pain, there's a disconnection. Now this I relate to. I go and I get in a car wreck. Pain, right? There's some sort of pain. Now, anything that reminds me of that pain, I am going to avoid, which causes me more pain. Oh no, now I don't want to get in a car. Oh no, now when I get in a car and I see a red stop sign, I get all anxious. Oh no, like all these things start to happen due to the association tied to the pain. So most of us spend our whole life running or avoiding the pain, the disconnection, which all of that avoidance is just making it more painful. We're creating unnecessary pain. So the goal is to reconnect. If we can reconnect that pain, it heals, it transforms, and now that pain can be turned into pleasure. And that pleasure can create our new story. You guys following so far? Is this making sense? Yeah? Okay. So connection, circle of connection. There's 4 parts to this. We're only going to focus on like 1 or 2. The circle of connection deals with a couple things. The first thing is what's called reality. The next one is called communication. I'll break these down in a second. The next one is understanding. And the next one is likability. So anytime we want to heal anything, it comes through connection. And if I want to improve connection, these are the 4 ways to improve it. Reality is the following. If I say, hey, this is a marker, and you're like, yes, that is a marker, we have a shared reality. We're like, okay, it's an agreement upon something that we both perceive as real. That's important. If there's a disconnection all the time, there's a break in one of these areas. Anytime there's some sort of disconnection, right? So if I'm feeling disconnected, it's due to one of these areas. So if I want to reconnect, I can focus on one of these areas and reconnect. Reality, for example, let's say I'm with my spouse and she's like, hey, Tyler, you're a jerk. And I'm like, no, I'm not. There is a break in reality. And her reality is, I'm a jerk. My reality is, no, I'm not. See, and if we fight against who's right, we will never come to connect. It will cause greater disconnection. So the goal in connecting is never to be right. It's always to get to see why they perceive something. So my goal would say, oh, I'm a jerk. That is true for her, no matter what I perceive. Whether I think I'm the best person on the planet, if she thinks this, it's real to her, period. So my goal would be to acknowledge that realness. And if I can acknowledge that realness, then now, guess what? We increase our connection. We improve that. You guys following this? It's making sense so far? Okay, I'm trying to teach something that usually takes a long time. So I apologize. There might be a lot of questions around this, but I just want the concept so we can get into the power story. Next piece is communication. Communication is sending a signal through words or actions or any type of way to like body language, tone, words. All of that is a form of communication. So if I send a message and it is received, that is called communication. So if I say to you, and I'm like, hey, Monica, and Monica's like, hey, we just did a communication. We just communicated. I sent the message, she sent it back. So that is communication in its simplicity. Okay. It's message sent, message received, message sent back, communication. Likability is the ability to agree upon something. So likability is to say, okay, I like this marker. And you're like, I don't like that marker. And I'm like, well, it's so pretty. It's awesome. And you're like, no, it's super ugly. That is a disconnection in likability. Likability, the more we like, that's why when we compliment someone, we always feel what? More connected. So when we like something and someone else likes it too, not only are we communicating, but we're also forming reality with it. Now, here's the big kicker, the understanding. Understanding is like a collaboration of everything, but it's really making sure that the words that are being used mean that you're not interpreting with your perceptions, that you're getting what they mean by what they say. For example, if someone says, wow, I feel stressed today. Stressed, right? The word stressed. Let's say they say stressed. Stressed, what is stressed? Well, maybe that person underneath the word stressed means a lot of things. It could mean, yeah, so when I say I'm stressed today, it means the washer broke, I lost my job, this thing happened. They tie so much to one word. And I might be thinking like, well, just take a couple breaths and you'll be not stressed. Go eat something, you'll be fine, right? But I don't know what they mean by what they say. So my goal is to understand each word that they use so that if I can understand the words, I can get their reality, we can communicate, and we can both agree upon things. And I know this is more kind of hitting on relationship, but the same goes with money, same goes with health. So in our body, let's say your body has stomach aches all the time. Well, the only reason that you're having some sort of thing going on is due to a disconnection. There's a disconnection happening. So if I wanted to increase my connection, guess what? I could start to understand more of how my belly is interpreting the things I'm putting in it, how it feels, how it thinks, and it has its own entity of connection with me. Every single organ, gland, and cell in your body does. It's not just your brain. It's not just our English or Spanish or French or whatever we do. It's in all parts of us. So if some part of us is disconnected, as we learn to communicate with that thing and understand it and like and form a reality around it, we will be connected, healing will occur, transformation will happen, and we'll be able to change our lives. Is this making sense? Yay, nay, maybe? Any questions on this so far? So literally every single tool out there on the planet, if it does good, it's going to do something around these pieces. You can take any tool on the planet, including the abundance alignment technique that I teach, the tapping and breath work. It's because, why does it work so well? Because every single thing you're doing is working on every area, and we're connecting so quickly that you're aligning to the thing you want and transforming in minutes and hours instead of days or years. Okay, good. All right. So moving on, now that we have a concept of that, now why and what does this have to do with story? Well, everything. For example, if I have the evidence of my past from my pains, which is a disconnection, and I need healing, whether it's to make more money, whether it's to improve my health, whether it's to improve my relationship, whatever it might be. I need to understand that if I avoid looking at it, avoid sharing it, avoidance is a symptom of pain. So if I have disconnections, my first tendency will be to avoid it. So the moment I sense a hesitation to share something, a hesitation to tell the full truth, a hesitation to confront. I know beneath that avoidance is a what? What's underneath the avoidance?
A pain.
Correct. A pain, a disconnection. So if I want to reconnect, what would be wise? If I confront it and I communicate it, back to our circle of connection. The moment I communicate it, what happens? We improve connection. Okay? This making sense. So this is why people out there do like talk therapy, but there's also a disconnection with talk therapy because they're just saying words, and a lot of times there's no understanding going on and there's no reality created. So they're just saying things, and then it's not communicated in every level. It's just logically expressed. So they're not actually addressing every part of you. They're just addressing the mental part of you. So that's why talk therapy doesn't tend to work as effective, but it is helpful because they do address one piece, which is communication. So when we communicate, it does form better connection. Okay. So when I was struggling back with pornography and I was struggling financially, and I remembered I just wanted to change my life, but I thought that I didn't have a story. I thought that I had no value in my life history because I hadn't experienced anything grand yet. I hadn't made $1 million. I was still addicted. I was still struggling. So all I could see was the pain, right? And I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it because of the pain. So as I learned the power of story, which I'm going to go over the steps here in a second, I remember thinking, and I go through it and I was like, well, I have no story. I remember this guy shared his story and he's like, I was a drug addict and I did this and this and this and this and like super crazy stuff. And I almost died in this near-death experience. And then I came to myself and like totally transformed. And now I'm doing millions of dollars. And I was like, well, crap. Like I'm just I live in Branson, Missouri back then. And I was like, I've got nothing going for me and I still have junk going on and I have no story. So how can I change unless I go get the outcome, right? That was where I was focused. I was too focused on that. But I realized in that moment, if you are living today, you have a transformational story inside of you. You just haven't valued it yet. And as I saw that and understood it, which I hope by the time we're done today, you'll get it, I started to share my story, and it was a real story, but I had to look back on my stories, my experiences of life, and interpret them and find the lessons there. So I thought my life was just like this. I was like, here I was, and I heard this guy, his story was all over the place, and I was like, man, I haven't experienced that. Like, I was never a drug addict. I didn't nearly die. Like, I have a good life. Like, I don't have anything like really problematic. Like, I actually thought I had a really good life. Like, I straight A student, class president, like things went really well for me. So I was like, I don't have any crazy stories. So I don't have anything to go for me until I looked at it. The reason I didn't value it is because I was avoiding it. Get it? And why was I avoiding? Because there was a pain associated there. So I looked back and I thought, well, what about my parents' divorce? Back then, when I was looking back, I was like, it was okay. Like they got a divorce and I was fine. Like I got over it. That's what I was like. It was no big deal. No problems. I still live. I still did everything. I was fine. But as I looked back on that, I thought, well, what led me to do pornography and video game addictions? And I didn't even want to look at these because I was negating them. And I was like, well, I'm not really addicted. Like it doesn't control me. I do it every now and then, but it really doesn't define who I am. And I could stop if I wanted to. I just haven't found a way to do it yet. And so I like justified all these things. And so I was like, well, it's not really that bad. And we label our history as, it's not really that much. It's not really that transformational. It's not really that bad. So we mask it. and that is avoiding it. You got to pick that up. We mask it, and that's due to the avoidance of the pain. So as I looked back on these things, and I watched my mom go through another divorce, and I watched through all these things, I realized there were places in my life that I had very powerful stories, but I ignored them out of fear. I blanketed it with, well, it's not really that good. I didn't really go through that much. The moment we justify, so justification, or lessen something, so you either justify it or lessen it, shorten it, make it not as big as it is an avoidance. And anytime we avoid, it is due to that there is some disconnection that we have not confronted. The moment you confront that disconnection, you will have reconnection in your life, and it will create joy. It'll create healing. So I saw this and I was like, well, actually, when my parents went through a divorce, how did I really feel? And I had to look back, and I had to spend time thinking about what choices did I make because of this? And I realized in that moment, I actually had a lot of pain around that. I just avoided it. And I just was like, hey, I'm fine. It doesn't even faze me. But as I looked back, I remember thinking about it and sitting in the couch and just feeling so afraid, feeling like it was all my fault, thinking that some part of me should have done something more to save my parents' marriage, that as the oldest son, I felt responsible. In that moment, that wasn't in my awareness because I avoided looking at it. I was just like, yeah, divorce happened. I moved through it. I'm fine. But as I looked into it, I realized I had a lot of pain. And by sharing the real truth, it will set you free. So I started to look at the lessons behind each thing that I went through. And I found there was a very profound lesson. I felt like it was all my fault. I felt like I couldn't live up to my potential. I felt like I should have done more. I felt like I wasn't perfect. And because of that, they went through a divorce. So it was my responsibility. I then went through and struggled with porn and video game addictions and never told anybody. But I thought, hey, it's no big deal. Like, I just worked through it and no problem. But the problem is because I wasn't communicating it, then I knew there was pain still associated there. And that pain is what holds on to the pattern. So I knew if I could find that pain and communicate it, then it would be set free and I wouldn't have to struggle with the pain anymore. I could talk about it as if it wasn't even me. And the more I looked at this, the more I realized my life is amazing. It is full of powerful stories that can change not only my life, but others as well. And your life is too. No matter what you've been through, you have a powerful story, probably multiple stories, that as you find the value through there and share it, the moment you share it, it starts to reconnect. At first, it was so hard to talk about. I felt shame around it. I felt like I shouldn't talk about it. I felt like I was lessening it by sharing it. All the interpretations, which are other stories about the story itself. So we contrive all these other ideas and perceptions to avoid sharing the truth. But the truth, if shared, will set you free. So that is an important lesson, to find and value your life stories. You guys getting this? This helpful so far?
Yes. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How do you share well, I guess this is going to come up later, but how do you share a story without it becoming like a victim mentality of, this happened to me, I want you to pity me, but I want to help you through yours?
Good question. Leads us to the next piece. So thanks for asking that. There's two kinds of stories. There's the pity story, and then there's the transformational story. Most of us are used to the pity stories, where someone comes to you and they're like, hey, Baylin, today's just really sucked. And I've had a horrible day. Like my fridge broke, my car broke down, and I'm on government aid and life sucks. Have a nice day. Then we're like, because we ask them like, how's it going? And then they tell us, and we're like, sorry, I asked about how you're doing. I'm sorry. So most of us don't want to go there because we're tired of the pity stories because we don't know how to handle it, and it reflects some of our pain. And so then we're like, I don't even know how to help myself. Like, how can I help you? Good luck. So that's called a pity story. So just right now, I want you to say, I don't share pity stories. I only share transformational stories. I don't share pity stories. I only share transformational stories. I'm going to teach you how to share a transformational story, even if you're in the pit. Okay. So you can be in the pit and still share transformational stories. I'll teach you how. So here's the 5 steps to sharing a powerful story. First part is you have an intro. Second part, you have a pit. Third part, you have a journey. Fourth part, you have a transformation. And the 5th part is you have a lesson or tie it to today. Okay? So these are the steps of a powerful story. And you can look at all the great stories, all the terrible movies. Like if you watch a movie and it just sucks, like in my opinion, one of the Hobbits, like, oh, it's horrible. And why? Because they focus too much on the pit. They're like, it's just war, like, and they missed out on the transformation in the journey. So if a movie, you can watch movies, and if you're like, man, that movie really sucked. Well, a lot of times it's because they either stayed too much in the pit and not enough focus on the journey. There was an imbalance. So when there's an imbalance, it just feels off. It feels wrong. But the great movies have a good, unless it's meant to be that way. Like if it's a drama, like just to be a drama, they will focus on the pit and then it's a crappy ending, right? Or a tragedy. But if you're actually wanting to transform people's lives, there needs to be a balance. Other people just share intro to transformation and they miss the pit. So that's called Superman, and you can't relate. So if I'm like, hey, by the way, I'm making millions of dollars, and yeah, I've never had to struggle in my life. It's super easy. Everybody can do it. Come on, you just got to work harder and smarter. People are going to not relate, and they're going to be like, what? Like, oh, I wasn't born that way. Like, you're just Superman and you have superpowers, right? But if we share, hey, this is the intro of who I was, then these were the negative experiences that I went through and why it hurt. This was the journey that I had to go on. This was the transformation or the ahas that countered the pit. And this is why I do what I do today, or this is the life lesson that I got out of this. Okay? So this is how to share a powerful story. Is it making sense, the steps here so far? Yay, nay, maybe? Yeah? Cool.
Yes.
Okay. So how do you share it? What can you share? What kind of stories? Well, there's a lot of different stories. So the story to heal, we're talking about that. How to heal is your core story. This one, your core story, or how to influence others, is also a life lesson story. So I'm going to share a couple of these. So my core story, I've already shared. And basically, people ask me like, what do I do? Why do I do it? Depending on where I'm at. So for me, I might say something like, yeah, well, one of the things that got me into personal development and teaching people how to change their lives actually started when I was like 12 years old. When I was 12, I remember I was sitting on my dad's couch and my dad walks into the room and he turns off the TV, which at the time I knew was like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. Like, did I forget to do the chores? Like, what am I missing here? And he sits down and he says, Tyler, I have something I need to tell you. And I was like, okay, what? And he says, and he looks at me and he says, Tyler, your mom and I are getting a divorce. And this was out of the blue. I didn't even know they were fighting, arguing. I had no idea. And internally, what I heard him say was, Tyler, your mom and I are getting a divorce. and it's all your fault. That's what I interpreted as. But I didn't say that. So I put on my smile and I pretended that, okay, like, I guess that's fine. But inside, my whole foundation of everything I knew was completely destroyed. I questioned my faith. I questioned my reality of what I was doing, like my purpose, like family unit, God. I didn't know anymore. And I watched as they separated. I had all these feelings. And as they'd ask me, how are you doing? All I knew how to say was, I'm fine. But inside, I felt confused. I felt like it was my fault. I felt like I should have done more. I felt like it was because I had messed up in my life that now it led to them messing up, and that it was because of me. And because of that, I went through and I turned to pornography. And I remember looking at it for the first time, and first time in years, finally feeling an excitement in my life, looking at porn, because I was so numb from all of the feelings that I didn't understand. Or I'd go play a video game, something I finally felt like I could control because I could win. And I felt like I was a loser because I felt like it was all my fault. And as I went through these experiences, I remember after going through from 12 to about 18 years old, sitting on my bed, it got so dark and I pretended that everything was fine, getting straight A's, class president, MVP. But at the end of the day, I would sit on my bed and I would think about multiple ways that I could just kill myself and wonder if anyone would miss me. And at night, I would cry myself to sleep. I'd wake up with my smile, go back to school. I watched my mom go through 2-3 more divorces at that time, my dad through another, and over and over and over, I just felt this feeling of, I am a failure. I'm the cause of all of this pain. As I ended up getting cleaned up a little bit, left on a mission for 2 years, finally felt like I was free. I felt like, wow, like service is what sets me free. Service is what makes me come alive. And I didn't have the addicted mind. And I was just like so focused on helping others. And then I came back and I fell back into the same pattern within about 6 months. And as I went through those experiences, I knew inside of me, some part of me knew I didn't have to stay stuck, that some part of me could change. But I lost the hope because I had tried and failed, tried and failed. And I didn't know if I could actually change. But that's when I started to study. I started to read books. I started to listen to CDs and podcasts and things that gave me hope, that saw that other people could change who didn't have anything. Other people could make it. So why not me? And it started to go on this journey of transformation. I met my wife, who taught me a lot about the mindset and how to value myself and the power of the universe and the different laws that govern it and how to utilize those for creation. And I realized that I was creating that reality. Like those stories, I was choosing to define me, which is why I continued to struggle financially and struggle with these things until I finally made decisions that I was going to be done. And I worked hard on myself, hours and hours and hours. I focused, I read, I did crazy things to try to change. And through that, I started to see change. And I broke free from the addicted mind. I broke free from the struggle. I broke free and being able to communicate. Back then, I remember my wife, when we first got married, she's like, hey, Tyler, we need to talk. Talking was not a thing that I did much. So she was like, I need to talk. And for me, talk represented pain. I'm in trouble. Oh no, I've got to solve something. So I would get defensive and I'd say, great, what do you want to talk about? Tell me. And she'd be like, I just want to talk. I'm like, I know. What do you want to talk about? So I would like fight her when she just said she wanted to talk because I had so much pain stuck to the word talk. And as I broke free from that and changed my stories around the word talk, I realized that talking is actually healing. It's transformational. And since then, we've been able to do millions of dollars. We've been able to help people transform their life. We've been able to write books and go travel the world and do all sorts of cool stuff. But it started by owning my story. So today, what I want to teach you is how to own your story. Cool? So what did I just do? That's called a core story. Did you pick up on stuff? Did you pick up on the flow? So I had my intro, right? What was the intro? Let's break my story down. This is important. What was the story?
The
Um,
intro would have been the divorce.
Yeah, so I was sitting on the couch, right? Divorce happens. Then what was the pit?
it is your feelings, how you felt numb,
Exactly.
felt confused,
Yeah.
turmoil, your whole foundation was shook
Good.
and
Good. So
you felt like you messed up. It was your fault. You're a
good.
failure.
Good. So the key here is in the pit. I didn't know this story existed 6 years ago. Like I thought my parents got divorced and everything was fine. That's what I thought until I looked at it and I realized I had to ask myself, what were the universal feelings or problems that I went through? Not feeling good enough, feeling like it was all my fault. How many people have ever felt like it was all your fault? Anybody ever felt that way? Yeah.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So these are things that are relatable. So any type of pain you've been through is probably a universal feeling. So you want to acknowledge that and look at your life and say, okay, what are some of the universal feelings or problems that I've been through? Okay, cool. So these are the pits. Then what happened after that? What was the journey?
Oh, you met your wife and she
Yep.
taught you a lot, like the power of creation, the laws that you
Yep.
needed to follow so you could be successful. You started talking. You defined what success meant to you or improvement, all those things.
Yep. Yeah. So I met my wife. So at first I left for a mission, got cleaned up a little bit, left. But there was another pit, right? I fell back into the same pattern. So sometimes your journey is full of little pits as well. And it's okay to mention those as long as you keep going to get to the transformation. So the transformation, what was that in my story?
You read a lot of books. You improved yourself. You
Yep. So
did
those are
whatever you
more
had
of
to.
the journey. And then part of the transformation was the aha of like, wow, I don't have to be stuck. Like I am in charge of my story. I can change. Right. So the transformation counters the pit. So you want to make sure that your transformation, and this is real life. Everything you've lived, you have this. So to every up, there is a down. To every equal, there is an opposite. And think to everything, there is a push and a pull. So to everything you've experienced negative, you've also experienced some form of transformation, even if you're still in it. And this is critical to your understanding and healing. So as I go through and share the key things of like, hey, now I felt like I could do things. I wasn't alone anymore. I realized it wasn't my fault, that I could move forward and I could change. And so then that leads us to the last part, which is what? What was the last step of the story?
This is why I do what I do today.
Yeah. So tying it into today or the lesson, like the critical lesson. So for me, I tied it in. So this is what I'm going to teach you is the power of story, right? So it's like, this is what I'm doing today. This could be for a webinar, a book, whatever you're doing, like your story networking. You could use that for anything to help people believe and get the excitement to want to experience what you are going to do. But it starts with story. Okay. Is this making sense? Is this helpful so far? This is good. Okay. So how do you share a story if you're still in the pit? How do you transform and share in a powerful way if you're still in the pit? This was one I had to learn on my own. It was when I was still struggling with pornography, and I didn't feel like I could share about it until I fully healed from it. And so I realized, though, that that was actually part of the cause of me staying stuck. Why? Because the avoidance of sharing it, why would that create more of the problem? Back to what I first taught. Why?
Well, that maybe the guilt or the feelings of confusion are messed up, that might stop you from wanting to share.
Exactly. So that guilt is part of the pain. And part of me feels like I have to heal 100% before talking about it because it's too painful to confront. So then I'll never heal, because actually part of the healing is communicating. So we avoid doing it, right? We avoid the pain and we say, once I'm fully healed, then I will go talk about this thing. Once I am fully transformed, once I make my millions, then I'll help other people make millions. But therein lies the problem. If I would have waited before I had 6 figures in my account to teach people on how to make money, I would still be broke. If I waited till I had a perfect marriage to teach about how to become and work on your marriage, I would still be struggling in my marriage. If I never shared about pornography, I'd still be struggling with pornography. So it hit me when I had a friend of mine. He was a little bit younger, and he's like way struggling. So here's like me with pornography. He was like he was like really struggling. So I thought, well, according to him, he's like, it's consuming his life. It's like killing him. For me, it was like every now and then, because I had progressed a lot, but I still hadn't fully triumphed. So part of me felt like, well, what if I just shared a couple steps to where I've become? Because even if I'm here, maybe I'm not at the golden sun of success, but maybe I'm 6 steps or 2 steps ahead of this dude. So maybe I just share and look at the 2 steps as the transformation itself. Being able to even make 2 steps. So that valuing the journey actually sped up my journey. So I remember sharing my story with him, and I was like, hey, and I told him like, hey, I still struggle, but hey, it doesn't consume me. It doesn't do this thing, and this thing. And back then, this was like 4 or 5 years ago. And it gave him hope that he could change, that he didn't have to stay as stuck as he was. And by me sharing, I actually didn't want to do it as much, because I started to heal and understand that part of the reason why I was addicted was because part of me was looking for something that felt like I was in control of. I felt out of control, so I would turn to an addictive behavior that I felt like I knew the cause. I would do the porn, feel guilt. Oh, I can create that. Like, I felt in charge. So it actually gave me a sense of control. So in my life, I was like, I can't make money. That's not something I'm in control of. So I felt like the only thing I could control was the negative stuff. So what did I do? Do the negative stuff. But as I started to change and started to share that story, all of a sudden I actually could create my reality and start to change how I thought and felt about myself. So that became the transformation, just being 2 or 3 steps ahead of someone else. So you don't have to be fully out of the pit. Maybe just take 2 steps towards your final destination, but you have to find the value from those 2 steps. This is critical to healing. If you've been through something, to realize that you're 2 steps ahead, or let me mute everybody, that you've improved in some way, then you will speed up your progress. Most people negate those little wins. They look back and they said, I haven't progressed. Then they continue to stay in the pit and they never attain their transformation. Is this helping? Like, are you guys getting this? Like, hopefully this is making sense, because this is so important on your journey of healing, to be able to own what you're going through, share your journey, share your transformation. If you don't, you'll be stuck in the pain, and then you'll continue to avoid the pain, and you'll be looking for the destination, and you'll never get there, because the destination is dependent upon the journey. And owning the journey and valuing the journey and seeing the journey as part of the destination. Is this making sense? Anybody catching this? Like, how is this? Okay, so let's get some feedback. What are you getting out of this? How is this going to make a difference for you in your life? Let's get a couple shares.
Well, for me, just don't hide my story. Go out and talk about it, and just use it so that people can know that they too can do it.
Very cool.
That's
very
what I've
cool.
done. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Virtual round of applause. Thanks for sharing. Awesome. Okay, one more share, and then we're going to get into the next phase.
For me, it was I do an MLM. So my health journey, I have that, and it's easy for me to find customers, but I'm still in the pit with scarcity and finances. So I never find builders because I don't share. I talk about if you want to do the business, but there's no passion in it because I'm still in the pit. So then just knowing that, just sharing the 2 steps, like I've been on furlough for COVID for the last year, and the little bit I get from this is actually helping me pay my rent every month.
Huge.
So that's my 2 steps.
Yeah, huge. So back 6 years ago when I was starting and I was teaching people on money, there was a guy who I enrolled. He paid me $8,000 back then to do some one-on-ones. And I had only like $10,000 that I had made up to that point, maybe 12. But it was in a very short amount of time. Like I did it in about a month once I started to learn. So I finally had some money in my bank account for the first time ever. And this guy, he had like $70,000 in his account, but he didn't have a job. So I had less money than he did. But here was the thing. I felt more rich than he did. I felt the feeling was I could create whatever I want. I could go anywhere and make some money if I needed to. I didn't have to be tied to how much money was in my bank account or not because the amount didn't define how I felt. And then I talked to him and he was so consumed, holding on to every dime. And he said, how is it that you feel more free than I do? And I said, because I'm not a slave to money. And for you, if you want to break free from this and actually grow your money even more than you have right now and not have to be a slave to it the rest of your life, would you like to work with me? Would it be worth it to you? And he's like, yes, it would. So then he paid me $8,000 and I coached him, and then he broke free and actually like doubled his investment within a couple of weeks. So for me, it wasn't about the attainment of money as much as it was about how I reacted around money. So I knew I was still sort of in the pit. Like I still hadn't made my hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions and all that, but I did know the value of the lessons that I was learning. And I focused on that. So I said, this person still is stuck in that pit, the trap of the mindset and the heart, yet I'm free. I am 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. So I'm going to share and focus on that. And I even told him, I was like, hey, you have more money in your account than I do, but I'm more free than you are. And it's like, whoa, because I'm not trying to pretend. I'm not like putting on a fake story, right? I want to be true and honest, but I also want to share the honest truth of the transformation and not hide that. And by sharing that, healing happens, transformation occurs. Yeah? Is that good? Does that help?
Thank you.
Okay. Another piece that I found, I was coaching someone on their story, and his dad was an alcoholic. He was abused, but he said, you know what? That's not really that important. I went through it. Like, I'm who I am today because of it. I'm really grateful for it. He devalued his story and he didn't get the lessons. So I was like, dude, you're sitting on a gold mine of a story, but because it has pain associated to it, you're not sharing it. And he's like, well, I don't want to blame my dad. I don't want to do this. And it's not, you're not blaming, but you telling the pit of what you've been through could change someone's life. This leads us into the influence part. So as you share the things that you've gone through and truly value all the experiences, when you share that, it enables other people to see and to say, wow, I too have been through something like that. Even just the ability to share it can be a transformation. Even just the ability to share it can be the transformation. Think about it. Someone who's going and stuck, hiding, saying, never saying anything. That in and of itself can be the transformation. Your ability to communicate about it without being tied to it. Cool, huh? Like this, oh, hope you guys get this. I have seen thousands of people's lives change through story.
That's exactly what I needed to hear.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Story. Recap. So we've talked a lot about the healing effect, valuing it as if everything you've experienced is a life lesson. We've talked a little bit about influence. The influence effect are stories that change lives. So the 5 steps to sharing a story, you have your intro, your pit, your journey, your transformation, tying it to today or the lesson of what it is. If it's a lesson, a lot of times it's to teach. So if you think of all the great teachers on the planet, they all have lessons behind their story. So I love parables. Parables are stories. So if you think of Christ and how he shared the stories, those stories have so much meaning because behind each story is layers and layers and layers upon meaning. And someone, you could share your story and those who have ears to hear will hear it and they will resonate and it'll change their life. Those who don't, they can't really deny it. It's just a story. So they can't fight it. It's your truth. And so you just share your story and it doesn't create, it allows people to interpret how they want. And those who are ready will change based off of your stories, the better you get at them. Cool? Okay, so influence. Enrolling effect. We're going to talk a little bit about the enrolling effect. Now, enrolling effect. Whose ever story is stronger wins. So if I'm talking to Joe Blow down the street and his story is, I'm broke, I can't afford it, I'm sick, I've tried everything. That's his story based on evidence, which is held in place by pain, right? So I know behind all this story, what he's basically communicating is pain, okay? So I know when he is sharing his story, I look at it this way. I don't feed it. I acknowledge it and I say, wow, like he's broke, he can't afford it, he's sick and tired, he's done all these things, tried everything. My story is different. My story is he can afford it. He can change. He does have the support. He can grow. Whoever's story is bigger, which mine is, wins. So he will then enroll with me if my story is bigger than his. What does that mean? It means that I believe in my story for him more than he believes in his negative story for him. And by belief, your story is so powerful. He's sold himself on this story every day of his life, and it's backed by years of evidence. So my story has to be very powerful through evidence, through passion, through power, through faith, to believe that he can change. And I build up my evidence, seeing other people change, reading good books, putting in information as much as I can, so that when someone comes with their story, I can share a more powerful story. I don't negate this story. I understand that story. I don't deny their story. I want to seek to understand it, right? Going back to the circle of connection, he might share his story. For me to connect with him, I need to get his reality. I need to communicate. I need to understand this. Once he is understood, then he is ready for a better story. And I can relate. If I can relate to this, understanding occurs. So people come to me all the time. They're like, Tyler, I can't afford it. I've like tried everything. I spent everything. I say, great, I get it. can I share with you an experience? And they're like, yeah. So I share a story, and I share a time where in my life, this is called a money story. Well, there was a time in my life where I was at an event. I had less than $1,600 in my bank account. I had driven with my wife, who was pregnant, from Arkansas to Utah to an event. And I didn't have any clients, no income. But I was at this event, and he offered something for $5,400. This was half my annual income, and I needed it. I didn't have a credit card to my name. My car was worth less than $3,000, and I had no money. But in that moment, when he offered it, I knew I needed it. I knew if I would take action and get it somehow, that it would help change my life if I applied it. So in that moment, I remember they're all rah, rah, yay, 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 go, go, go. And a voice entered my head. And this was a very spiritual experience for me. And it said, who are you going to serve? Money or me? And I remember feeling this sensation of looking back on my life where all the times where I said, I can't afford that I was serving money. Money was my master. I allowed the lack of money to dictate my choices. If I didn't have it, I didn't do it. And I thought, wow, I have allowed money to choose for me instead of me choosing based off of a higher power who I claim to have faith in, yet I don't act on because of the lack of money. And I realized that I was serving money so much of my life because I was in a poverty state. And then and there, I made a choice. It was a difficult choice because it taught me to confront and change. And I decided I was not going to be a victim and a slave to money ever again. And I decided I'm going to do the thing. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it. And I had to come up with it that day. So I called people. I did things that I'd never done. I borrowed from random people, called people up. And someone loaned me a credit card for like $5,500, and I bought the program. So I get it, Mr. Client. I get it that you don't have money and that you can't afford it. But the question is, it's not about the money. It's about, are you really ready to change and do what it takes to come up with it and create it so that you can live your life and take it to the next level? So see how I can share that story in a way to inspire and enroll someone, to help them see that their story, as real as it is, my story is more real because I've lived it and I've owned it. Now, here's the thing. Did I remember that story fully? No, I didn't until I looked back and I had to look and say, where in my life have I made decisions that were out of money? You know, and as I looked back, I realized that I had a lot of value in those stories that I just thought, yeah, I never told anybody back then. I was just like, yeah, I just signed up and called a bunch of people, and it was tough, but I did it. And it wasn't very inspiring. But as I looked back at how it actually was laid out, I was like, wow, that was really powerful. Like, why didn't I value that story? Well, I knew because there was some pain associated to it. But as I got the lesson, then I realized how big the transformation was. And then I've had multiple stories like that. Is this making sense? Yay, nay? Yeah?
This is awesome. Can I just share? I've always used the excuse that I'm a private person and nobody needs to know.
Absolutely. Because if somebody knew, what would happen?
Then they would know your pain.
Right? And it would cause more?
It would cause more stress, really.
More pain.
Yeah, and more pain.
So why would I share something, right?
Right.
So hide our gold nuggets. And we say, no, this has a little bit of darkness to it, so I can't share it. So I'm going to hide the 90% of gold because of the 10% of dark.
Right.
So I'm just going to hold on to this. And guess what? We're going to bury it, and then it dies. But if we share it, the darkness starts to go away, and it becomes just plain gold. So each of you have a gold mine of stories inside of you. You're sitting on them. They're inside of who you are. Here's the different types of stories. You have your core story, which we just talked about, right? It's what defines who you are, why you do what you do. It really embodies kind of your life mission. This tends to be, and you can have multiple variations. You can have money stories. Money stories. So money stories are stories to help people believe or diffuse the objection around money. You can have time stories. Time stories are things that if like, I just don't have the time, you can share a time story where there was a time in my life that I went through a place where I didn't have the time to do something, but I made it happen anyway, and diffuses that objection of time. You can also have client experiences or client testimonial stories or personal testimonial stories. This helps build trust and belief. So each one has a different purpose. Okay, so the money one helps diffuse objections and inspires people to spend money on things that they need. Time helps them dedicate the time and energy they need in order to succeed. Core story builds trust. Client testimonials build hope, belief. There's all sorts of stories that you can share. Then there's just like lesson stories. So like lessons that you've been through life that you can share to teach certain lessons. Okay. So there's all sorts of stories. And I look at stories as like a tool belt. For any situation that comes my way, I just pull out a story, share, boom, boom, boom. And now you become a master at enrolling people into their dreams. Because no matter what they're stuck with, if you have a story to counter it, you can't fight a story. You can't. But if you tell somebody, hey, just come up with the money, they're going to fight it. But if you inspire them to see a better path, or they're so busy and you just tell them, make the time for it, they'll be like, yeah, whatever. But if you inspire them through story and relate to them and then transform it into a powerful lesson, they will go beyond to make it happen. Okay? This is good? So, versions of stories. I like to start with 90 seconds, 60 seconds, and 30 seconds. These are good kind of templates. So let's practice. We're going to do a core story here. And by the way, for those of you who are just kind of new to what I'm doing or whatever, at the end of this, I am going to share a link. If you want to book a consultation with me, I have opened up some slots, and it's going to be free for those who have not participated or learned how to do stories or want to learn how to enroll people or change the stories of your internal interpretations through the alignment technique. I'm going to open up a couple spots, and I'll share that at the end of this. So if you do want that, I had to open up, like, my whole week's almost booked out, but I had a couple left. So I wanted to open that up just for those who are here on the webinar and on the recording. Okay. Rosine says, what is the value of the lessons you're learning? What is the value of the lessons you're learning? I'm not sure what that question is, but if you clarify, I can maybe help you. So your 90 second, 60 second, 30 second. These are good for just practicing. And I had to drill my story over and over and over and over and over. The problem with drilling it is you kind of lose the authenticity of it and it feels fake. But the key to a good story is you could share it 1,000 times and it be just as powerful. Okay? And that's the key. Don't lose the authenticity of the story by sharing it over and over and over. It should get more rich, more powerful. So we're going to practice a 90-second story. Okay? Here's how it goes. You're going to share you're going to start with your intro. You're going to get into a pit. Just pick like 2 to 3 emotions that you can pinpoint. Then you're going to transformation or journey, right? The journey. And then you're going to do the transformation, which should be 2 to 3 emotions, and then tie it to today. Okay. I'm going to give you a second to map that out. So just kind of write it on a piece of paper. What is your intro consist of? Just bullet points. So mine would be like, I was couch, talking to my dad, divorce. Good. What were the core feelings that I felt? I felt alone, all my fault, and failure. Great. So the journey, you can map out a couple pieces on the journey. So just be like, cool, what's a part of my journey? Maybe going on a mission, talking to my wife, met her, and then learning and applying. What was the transformation? What were the really core emotions there? The transformation was learning that I was in control. I wasn't a failure. A lot of times it's the opposite of the pit. So I wasn't a failure. I could change. And why I do what I do today, or the lesson you want to teach. Okay, so why I do what I do. So that's why I help people get out of the failure and into the transformation. So you could just be like, that's why I help them get out of here and into here. That could be your interpretation of it. Okay. All right. So we're going to practice this. Who would like to be my volunteer? I'm going to time you. You have 90 seconds. Put you on the spot. Boom. Who wants to do it? Let's do it. You get live coaching. I used to have people pay me 35 grand and I coached them on this stuff. So you guys are getting it for free. Come on, people.
Okay.
All right. Maritza,
First.
let's do it.
Okay. So my intro is that I was in
Okay. And here's how you're going to start. So you're just going to be like, what basically got me started in doing what I do today is, so that kind of sets it up. Or what basically got me to where I'm at today is, go into the intro.
What
Okay.
basically,
And then I'm going to give you I'm going to tell you 45 seconds. So when I say 45 seconds, you should be getting out of the pit. Okay. And then you have about 45 seconds to finish. Okay. Ready? And
yes.
Begin.
What basically got me into this, where I'm today, is that I got divorced in 2018 after 23 years of marriage. I wasn't able to see that my partner wasn't interested in continuing the relationship. And even though I was giving so much, I was kind of married alone. And then after a while, I realized I can't salvage this relationship by myself. I can't be in it by myself. So I have to let it go. So I felt alone, tired. I felt failure, a lot of anger, rage. And so I decided, I didn't know Tyler then, but I decided to do a therapy on myself.
45 seconds.
That helped me to release a lot of those negative anger emotions that I was feeling. I learned from this experience that I can survive, I can pay my own bills, I can be independent, I can do the things I want to do, I can be what I want to be. And this is what I want to share with everybody else. So that's all I could do in 45 seconds.
Boom. Big round of applause. Well done. Awesome. Yeah, you were even less. That was 1 minute and 8 seconds. Well done. Okay, so what did she do well? Let's just get a little bit of feedback. What went well with that story?
She shared a lot of her pain and insecurities and what the situation was like.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. So you focused a lot on that pit, and it felt relatable. Like we heard it and felt it. Good. What else went well?
Her description of being alone in this marriage was interesting. And then I think that's where the curve started to go up.
Yeah. So she described that pain of being alone, and then all of a sudden took us on the journey, and it felt really great when she started sharing about the transformation. It was like, oh, we went with her, which was awesome. Yeah, great. What do you feel like could be improved?
Climax, perhaps?
Yeah, so I think a little bit more feeling behind it. Sometimes we state the words, but we don't yet evoke the emotion with the words. So your tone kind of stayed the same when you were sharing the pit and the transformation. Your tone needs to change with those. So when we share the pit, a lot of times we're like, yeah, so I was alone, I was frustrated. And then when we get into the transformation, we should come more alive talking about it, right? So it's like, and then we had this and this and this. So if I was telling a story without words, here I would say it. And I'm just going to use this as an example. I'm going to say this over and over. So this, 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 this. So
Interesting.
see how I told a story without any words? Did you feel the flow of it just using the word this? Fascinating, isn't it? So tone is over 30% of communication. So if we don't use the tone, the words, it's a disconnect. So some of the best storytellers, they have that tone. And you've got to incorporate the tone and the body language. Did you notice how my body language also changed? Body language is like almost half or more of communication. So you could even just practice sharing stories with your body language. You just talk without words and go like,
I think another thing that would have been really helpful is for her to give a few examples of what it was like in the marriage, one time, blah, 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 and this is how I felt.
Yeah, that would be good. And for 90 seconds, it's kind of short. But even just doing that body language, you see how using your body, you can tell a story without words, right? So you can, telling a story, there's so much involved. It's not just the words, but it's how we communicate those words that makes all the difference. Is this helpful? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Very cool. And yeah, I think if you since you did have that extra time, I think if you would have given us an example, that would have made it even more real for us. Yeah. Okay, virtual round of applause to all the shares. And thanks, Maritza, for sharing and being vulnerable. Awesome job. Okay, well done. So now we're going to do a 30-second story. 30 seconds. Okay, here's how it is. I'm going to do an example. Okay, this one you have to be really concise, very fast. Now, I use 30-second stories very rarely, but there's times when you're networking and you only have 90 seconds to share. I used to do these like, hey, you've got 90 seconds to tell you what you do. I would share my 30-second story because I knew stories were remembered more than anything else. So I practiced my 30-second story and I would get up and stand in front of groups and mess up over and over and over and over and over until it got really, really good. Okay. So 30-second stories are fun. It's not a lot of fluff and you can't tell a lot of details. So it's basically intro, one emotion. It's like 1 point on each thing because by the time you're in 15 seconds, you're already got halfway done. So then you've got like one here and then one thing here. So if I was telling my story, I'd say, let me time it. Okay. Let's see what I get. It's been a while since I've done a 30-second. Boom. So what got me started really started back when I was 12. My dad and mom got a divorce. I felt like it was all my fault. And I struggled with pornography and suicidal thoughts for years. It wasn't until I started to look at that I was in control of my life and I could change the stories about what I did. And that's why I teach people today to take back their life through the power of story so they can become free. 31 seconds. Boom. Okay, so very quick, there was a little bit of a focus on a pit, a little bit of hesitation in the tone, which makes a difference, and then a focus on an emotion and excitement, right? So it can be very succinct, and it's good to practice this, to do 60-second, 90-second, 30-second versions, because it helps you flush out what is your message? What is it really? Okay. So who would like to practice? Who would like to do their 30-second version? We need a new volunteer.
This is Valora.
All right, Valora,
Uh-huh.
let's do it. Okay, 30 seconds. Ready? Oh, and I'm going to give you a 15-second heads up. So I'll say 15 seconds and just keep going, okay?
Okay.
Ready and begin.
So I was poisoned by Roundup when I was working for a landscaping company, and I was in a lot of pain, and I had to figure out how to get on top of my health, and that's why I do detox today.
15 seconds.
So I do colon hydrotherapy and every kind of detox that I know of that can help the body, and we get you back to where you don't feel pain.
Boom. Okay, good job. 27 seconds. Virtual round of applause. Okay, very good. So yeah, you could even focus a little bit more on pausing there right in that pain, and then focus a little bit more on some of the transformation of what the colon stuff does and how it set you free from that. Okay. Very
Thank
cool.
you.
Yeah, well done. And great job in 30 seconds. Boom. It was clear, concise. Well done. Okay. Questions about what we've covered so far. Questions on story, the circle of connection, questions on the flow of a story, tone, body language. Any questions on the theory behind story of the pain, the disconnections, the reconnections, how all that works? I'd like to just take a couple questions here before we move on to the last piece for today.
I have one.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I did come in a little late, and I've heard you speak before, but how can this apply to written stories as well as publicly spoken?
Good question. When you talk about written, are you talking about like in a book form? Or
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, like the flow of a story.
Right.
And the tone. So the written word, I'm not necessarily a writer per se, but if you read a good book, and a good book has this flow, like any good book you'll see, they have an intro, they have pits, they have journey, they have transformation. It's the hero's journey is basically what it's called. And any good story follows this, whether written or vocalized. Now, in a book, they have to use a lot of the words to describe the feelings and the emotions. So they've got to be a wordsmith. Okay. But any good book you watch, it's full of the big story mixed with lots of small stories in between, like journeys and transformations and pits and stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, very good question. Who else has another question? What other questions you guys have about anything we've covered so far?
I've got a question, Tyler.
Yeah, go for it.
So we're like going, you can do this for individual circumstances, or like the way you're doing it, you're going back to this one occurrence that happened back here and then.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do something more recent and just kind of box that in so it's this event?
Absolutely. Yeah. I share current stories all the time still.
Okay.
So everything you go through in life can become a powerful story.
So if you're trying to sell it or to sell your services or product, do you want to go all the way back and tell the original story? Or do you want to tell like a successful story? Because I know there's different kind of stories we can tell.
Yeah. For example, let's talk about some oils. Like I just got into oils. So I could share this story, and I'll just share it in like a minute. And then I'm going to teach you guys how to change the story in your cells. So we're going to go into that for a second and like change the stories inside of you to create your own reality. And then we'll finish up on that. Okay. So let's say I wanted to sell some stuff on oils. So I would say, okay, cool. I'd go and start with my intro and the pit and then the transformation journey. So a couple weeks back, I felt very led to start doing oils. And I've been around oils for years and years and years and years, but I had this distinct impression that it was something that I needed to do. So I signed up, bought the kit, comes to me, and I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm so busy. I've got all these things that I'm doing. How is it that I'm going to focus the time and energy to really use what's given here? And I felt like it was another thing. Like I couldn't focus on the time and energy to share it, to use it. And yet in that moment, I thought, well, what would have to happen for it just to make it worth it for me? And my baby, she was crying. She's upset. She's got colic going on. And I remember thinking about one of the oils, and it was like this digest zen stuff. And I thought, well, maybe I'll use that and see how it goes. And I was doing a bunch of tapping and all sorts of stuff. And so I take some, I rub it all over her belly. And this was like fussy every day, just all the time, not calming down, doing a bunch of stuff to try to help it. And immediately she just starts to relax and calm down. And I thought, even all the things, like if I never used another oil again, like just seeing that made it worth it to me. To know that I had one extra tool in my tool belt to help my little daughter, who's like 4 weeks old now, to help her calm herself and feel more comfortable. So I thought to myself, for people who are out there, they're busy, they've got lives, that they're doing so much, but if they find one oil that they could use to make a difference in their life or that of their kids, would it be worth it for them to take action and learn and apply, even if it's just one thing? So like I could share that, right? So see how I can tie it into anything that I'm wanting to share or use. Make sense? Okay, very cool. All right, now we've covered a lot of the things. Last piece I want to talk about is how in every organ, gland, and cell of our body, there are stories. We have thousands of them in all parts of us. These stories are what define us, whether for good or for not so good. Whatever result you have in your life, realize that it is tied to a story. And that story is created either through pain, or if it's a positive thing, pleasure. And if it is something that is associated with pain, remember that as you connect, going through that circle of connection and being able to understand form, reality, likability, and communication, having all those pieces, that pain dissipates. It reconnects and allows you to change your story. For me, there's a lot of different ways you can change your story. You could just focus on the communication part. You could just focus on the likability part. You could just focus on the understanding part. That can help you change your story. Your story is what you sell yourself on the most. So what current state you're living in is because you've sold yourself in more parts of you than not on that story. So if you're struggling financially, if things are not happening in your relationship, if you're disconnected, it's because more parts of you believe that story than not. Making sense? So the key is, can we go in and change the interpretation of all parts of us so that this story changes from pain to joy and pleasure, so we can create what we want and reconnect? For me, aligning is one of the best ways. If you've never heard of the abundance alignment technique, it's a process where you tap, you breathe through your nose, out through your mouth, you address every organ, gland, cell, enabler, and inhibitor in your body so that you can reprogram how your body interprets those stories. Through redefining, aligning, that is one of the most effective ways to change your story. So that is a lot of the things we have for you today. If you are looking for next level stuff, is there anyone interested in learning more about story mastery or being able to change how those stories inside of your body changes your results. Anyone who's not working with me who would like to see some of those options of what it would look like, yay, nay. If not, we'll just end it here. But if somebody's in, okay, we got a couple people. Okay, so here's some of the ways that you can change this and work on this. We've got 3 main options. The first option is an introductory. It's a 10-day challenge. And in that challenge helps you identify and get clear on what it is that's going on in your life. Helps you redefine what it is that you're interpreting. So for example, if you're struggling financially, or if you're struggling in a relationship or in health, each one of those words is a layer of stories. And in a 10 days, you can go through and pinpoint how your body's interpreting it and start using the basic form of the alignment technique to change that story. So that's $97 doing that. It's a 10-day challenge. It's phenomenal, 30 minutes to an hour long a day. And that's kind of level 1. Okay. That's level 1. Many of you have probably done the challenge. The second level is, so that's the first level, is the challenge. Okay. The second level is more of a group dynamic. And this is where you learn the full process. You get 3 months of coaching. We do 3 months of aligning every week on ourselves. It's more of a journey, because I believe changing stories is a journey, and it's a way of living life. You'll have new things come at you. Things will happen. You'll change, and then new stuff will come. And my goal is to empower you to have the tools and techniques so that you can thrive and do it without me. I want to enable people so that they can become masters of their stories in their life, not just sharing them, but believing their own stories first so that they can be the walking billboard. As you go walk, the light you shine, how you communicate, how you connect with people, that reflects the stories that you tell yourself every single day. So my goal in that is, it's a group dynamic. Okay, that's the other option. That one. And the third level is more of a one-on-one intensive. It's where we map out everything. You do it with me, 3-hour deep dive, map out all the allergies, the addictions, the stories that are going on. And then we do like 10 sessions over the course of 10 to 12 weeks or more. And then you have a year long of coaching, a year long of aligning, and tons of courses as well. So those are our options. If you're interested in any one of these options, I have a link available to sign up for what's called an abundance alignment consultation. This consultation will be 30 minutes. This one will be with me specifically. In the future, it might be with one of my coaches. I wanted to use this link specifically because one of my coaches, she had a death in one of her friends, and she's unavailable this weekend. So I have opened up my calendar for next week, some of it this week, and I've got a few spaces open. Normally, I like to charge for these things because some people don't show. But if you're committed to mastering yourself, if you're committed to go on a journey and explore what it's like to really identify these core stories that are going on in your life and utilize them and change them through aligning, through valuing yourself. Part of these courses, I actually teach more on story called Impact to Income. And it's a whole course that teaches you what we taught today, like how to find your story, how to value it, how to master it. And constantly in the group, some of you are in the groups with me, I go in deeper levels. And if you get stuck, I'll teach more on this. Like, my goal is to help you master this. So if you're interested, I have a link that I'm going to share right here in the chat. And for those of you on the recording, I'll send this in email form. But once it's full, it's full. I only have a few spots open. And so first come, first serve basis. If you book, please be in integrity, keep your integrity, and show up. Okay. If you are one of those that life suddenly happens and you don't show up, I'll sick my dog on you. He's a black lab and he's super vicious. And he's like the biggest baby ever. He would run from anybody. He runs from our 3-year-old. So here's the link right there. So you can click it. It's in the chat. That's the link to book an abundance alignment consultation. It's free. What you're going to do is, if you're already working with us in one of these levels, or you want to upgrade or whatever, totally fine to book a link. If you're exploring, this is an exploratory session. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. Questions help unveil the stories we tell ourselves. So whether it's you're wanting to improve finances, whether it's you're wanting to improve your health, whether it's you're wanting to improve your connection with a relationship, each of those are stories that as you change and align, you'll be able to improve and master. I teach the alignment technique, teach a lot of the skills as well. And so if you're wanting to make that change, click that link, take time to fill out the questionnaire, pick a time slot. It'll probably be available most of the times, or next week availability. It's a 30-minute consultation where I'll help you gain the clarity, figure out what next steps are, and help you move forward on whatever it is. And if it's not a fit, if these things aren't a fit, totally fine. At least I can help you gain that clarity and figure out what is a fit. What are you really needing in your life? Okay. So that's what I have for you. Click that link and make it happen. Okay. And one last thing I want to share before we kind of wrap this up. This is called a regret story. So this is also a story that I didn't teach you yet. I wanted to save it to the end. So this is a great story. If you're influencing people or helping people take action, this is a great story to tell. A regret story is a time in your life, something that you did or didn't do that you regret. Okay. So I'm kind of telling you before I tell it. It kind of takes away a little bit of the fun, but it's still really, really powerful. So there once was a man, he was in Florida and he heard about the gold rush and he's like, yes. And he goes to California, he buys up everything and he's like, sweet. And he finds a little piece of gold and he's like, there's gold here. I know it. And he gets so excited and he's so like, he knows there's gold. And so he brings all of his family and friends and he buys all these digging supplies and they go to work week after week after week. They're digging and digging and digging and there's no gold. So he continues to dig and he knows there's gold. He found some. So he's like, okay, like I know there's here. And he's starting to worry now because he's exhausting all his resources. He's tried everything. But he knows it can happen. So he's keeps digging, keeps digging, keeps digging. Weeks turn into months. Months get bigger and bigger and bigger until he's broke. He gives all of his stuff to the pawn shop down the road and everybody goes back home. Now, this pawn man, he realizes what he's been given. He has these state-of-the-art tools to dig for gold. But he also knows that he has no idea where the gold really is. So he hires someone who knows the lay of the land. And he hires him and he looks around and he takes all his special equipment and he's measuring and measuring. And 3 feet from where this previous man was digging, he says, oh, well, 3 feet over here, this is where the fault line is and the gold, it should be right here. So this man digs 3 feet from the hole and he finds the gold. He hits it. So many times in our lives, you have tried a lot of things. You've done lots of programs, you've done coaching, you've done all sorts of stuff. But if you're still seeking a solution, maybe it's because your story is too strong. And no matter what you've tried, it hasn't worked because your story's countering those things from working. You could be 3 feet from changing your story completely and finally breaking through that thing that you thought was impossible to break. So I'm going to encourage you, if you feel like you're ready for a transformation and you want the coaching, the guidance, that's what was the difference here, is one man knew that if he hired it out to someone who's been there, who's done it, that it would make it all worth it. So if you want to go on that journey with me, I encourage you, book a session. Let's explore what works for you. Let's find those key stories that you want to change. And if you're really ready to make some changes permanently, then book a consultation, commit to show up, fill out the questionnaire. It'll be really powerful. And by the time we're done, we'll be able to help you gain the clarity and take action on whatever it is that you need to take action on. Cool? Okay. That's what I have for you today. Again, the link is here. I'll drop it one more time for any of those who would like to book a session. It's very limited, and click that link. Okay. So I just want to thank you guys for being here. That's called a regret story. And it helps people. It helps it be real, because honestly, like, opportunities come every day. But I think, who was it? Jim Rohn once said that it's, opportunities is like the blowing of the wind, and it all depends on you setting the sail. So opportunities are happening, but how you set the sail depends if you're going to catch those opportunities. So if you want to catch that opportunity, click the link. Let's explore together. Hopefully we can help you align, transform those stories into something that can truly make an impact. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll be on here just a couple more. If you have questions or anything, for those of you who are ready to book, just book it. And I just want to thank you guys for taking the time with me today. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys got out of it. So I'd love to hear what you got out of this, or any questions you have.
Great presentation, Tyler.
Well,
you say you're posting this in the email to your your site?
Yeah. I'll send it out to the emails if you registered for it, and I'll probably post it in my Facebook group. We'll keep it up for a few days so you can repeat, because this was a lot of material to practice it. I highly encourage you practicing sharing your stories. That 90-second, 30-second, that's pure repetition, guys. You just got to practice that. Okay.
Right. Just like watching this and being involved in learning my story again, I've gained more insight this time around.
Very cool.
So, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate you, and thanks for all you're doing.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
All right. We'll see y'all.
Thank you, Tyler.